Today, we're going to talk about subject-verb agreement. What does that mean? Subject-verb agreement. The rule is that your subject, which is a noun or pronoun that the sentence is about, plus your verb, the verb is the action or the word that links adjectives and other sentence parts to the noun, must agree in number. But what does that mean? It means that you have to match the verbs up with each noun in the sentence. Pay close attention to whether the noun is singular or plural, and then choose a verb that's appropriate. So, for example, the singular first-person words are I write, you write. In the third-person singular, it's still singular, but our verb changes and we add an S to most verbs. So he writes, she writes, it writes. And your plural nouns are we write and they write. All pronouns can be replaced by nouns. It's just a matter of remembering which verb to use. So he, she, it are your pronouns. The dog eats, it eats. Jim goes to work, he goes. Karen drives her new car, she drives. Charles and Susan eat at the restaurant, they eat. The three children were very quiet. They were very quiet. So you just have to pay attention to where your nouns and your pronouns are in your sentence and then decide how to match your verb. Here is a list of some irregular verbs. You already know this information. You just may not be as aware of it when you're writing. So your third person singular form would be he has versus we have. She does or I do, we do. Can stays the same no matter what. So he can or they can. Was and were and is and are also change. He was, he is, they were, you are. These are verbs that are just a bit more complicated than just adding S. So let's talk about writing sentences and how our subject-verb agreement fits into the larger picture. Compound subjects with and are considered plural. So for example, math and science is subjects. That is incorrect because math and science even though they're both singular, they count together. So it's like adding 1 + 1 = 2. So it should be math and science are. Microsoft and Google are interested in studying deep learning. The government and corporations take responsibility for the citizens by enforcing and abiding laws. So, this is where it can get a little bit confusing. When a sentence uses or nor. So let's start here. When a sentence has two singular nouns joined together with or nor, we treat the subjects as singular. It's like saying this or that. Either way, you'll only end up with one thing. Either the government or the individual is responsible for the pollution crisis our world is facing. When a sentence has two plural nouns joined together with or nor, we treat the subjects as plural. Because if we take away the or, you still have a plural noun. So individuals are, organizations are. Individuals or organizations are ultimately responsible for solutions that will help solve our pollution crisis. Now, this is the tricky part. When a sentence has a plural noun and a singular noun joined together with or nor, we use the noun that is closest to the verb, so your second noun, to decide if the verb should be singular or plural. The government or organizations are responsible, and I use the word are because organizations is plural and it has an S. Organizations or the government is responsible. In this case, the government is considered singular, so I use the verb is. Non-count nouns. So these are nouns that are considered non-count. They don't have a number, and they're actually singular nouns. Even though they might stand for a bigger picture, and it might stand for more than one person, they're actually only singular. So some examples of this are society, research, information, or education. A lot of these nouns will not have an article, and many of them will almost never be plural, or very rarely be plural. So a wrong example of how to use these are, society are not responsible for maintaining laws and rules set forth by the government. Even though society can be a group of people, it's still not singular, so you should use is. Society is. Research shows citizens that the unemployment rate has dramatically decreased since the election of the new president. So in this case, we add the S because research really is a third person singular verb, so it shows. A collective noun. These are words that stand for a lot of people, but again, are usually singular. So take a minute and read through the examples. So I've used some of these examples in our sentences so that you can see them. The board of directors was pleased to hear of the decision being made. So even though we've used of directors and directors is plural, that is not part of your noun. The main part of your noun is the board. So we say the board was pleased. The committee meets once per month to make decisions on the calendar of events. So again, the committee, even though it has more than one person, is still third person singular. The team of scientists work very hard to decide the best methods for solving our current crisis. So again, even though whatever comes afterwards of scientists, the point of scientists is to further describe team. The team of something. It could be any word. And even if that word is plural, you will still stay with a third person singular word. The pile of newspapers is making me uncomfortable. Here's an example of indefinite pronouns. So your singular indefinite pronouns are, just for example, another, anyone, each, everyone, everybody, everything, much, nobody, nothing, other, somebody, anybody, anything. So the purpose of these, and the few, either and little, the purpose of these is to stand for one word. So it's a pronoun that doesn't have a number attached to it. So for example, everyone is invited to the mayor's inauguration. These are considered singular, again, even though they can stand for more than one person. An example of a plural indefinite pronoun are both, few, many, others, and several. All doctors take the Hippocratic Oath. Okay, so for example, there are some that are singular and plural, and this is determined by the words that come after. So all, any, more, most, none, and there's one more down there. So all of society. And so in this case, of society is singular, so we treat all as singular. So all of society considers. All educators consider. And again, because this is plural, our verb needs to be singular. So all educators consider the needs of students. Okay, this is where a lot of our clients and a lot of our students make a bulk of their mistakes. Because what happens in sentences is you get these phrases, and phrases are just parts of a sentence that add value. They can add value as an adjective or as a describer, but they add value to the sentence, but can't stand on their own. And when you start adding in different phrases, and you especially so when you start adding in different phrases, it gets confusing. So you have to keep track of your verbs and your nouns. So you can always ask yourself, if you find a verb, what is doing this action? Or what does this information describe? So a bad example is a significant factor that illustrates this opinion are. And a lot of people get confused because illustrates is, even though it's a verb here, people see an S and they think that it's plural, but actually factor is your noun. A significant factor that illustrates this opinion is people cannot understand. Another example is the optimal conditions to cultivate tea not only requires, so again, this is a bad example because what people think of as the noun is tea, but the actual noun is conditions. So you have to make sure that you're looking at, so to cultivate tea not only is not crucial to your sentence. So you have to make sure that you keep your actions and your verbs or your nouns together. The optimal conditions to cultivate tea not only require the right tropical climate, and that's the correct way to write that sentence. Another confusing part is parallel structures. Sometimes people use and to separate ideas that go with the same noun. And when you do that, you have to make sure that you find the subject for the verb. So for example, art is critical to developing young minds and create a healthy imagination in children. This is wrong. And the problem is that art is your main noun. Your verbs are is and create. They both should be the singular, the third person singular verb. So art is critical to developing young minds and creates a healthy imagination in children. So you have to add the S because art is a third person singular. Organizing a home takes a lot of skill and needs a lot of dedicated time. Okay, so again, organizing a home takes a lot of skill and needs a lot of dedicated time. So you want to make sure that even though both verbs describe organizing a home, so the idea is organizing a home takes a lot of skills, period. Organizing a home needs a lot of dedicated time. So you're joining those two verbs together because you have the same subject. So you have to make sure that you carry your verb tenses over after your and. This is another tricky one that many people use mistakes or have mistakes. When using there to begin a sentence, you begin with the nouns that follow as your main subject. So if the noun is plural, you will use there are. There are many reasons. So again, reasons is really our main verb. But in this case, we're using there are to start our sentence. So you have to pay attention to the nouns that come after. If the noun is singular, you will use there is. There is no reason to place our lives in danger. So reason is our noun, and we want that to be singular. Nouns throughout a sentence. This is really important. Be careful to be consistent in all of your sentence parts. So far, we've just talked about subjects, but there are lots of nouns in a sentence that do not come at the beginning. One example is using who, what, or that. A significant factor that illustrates this opinion is that cars are as fuel efficient as bikes. So in this case, we've started a new sentence part that cars are as fuel efficient as bikes. So cars are is another verb and another noun. Another noun and another verb, as opposed to factor that illustrates. Another example is using a semicolon. Having an extended life does not mean that people are losing quality of life. It means that an individual is spending more quality time with loved ones. So an individual is, it means starts your new sentence after the semicolon, and an individual has needs its own verb and noun agreement. Another is separating with a conjunction, like and, but, however, and so on. It is a generally accepted fact that that research is significantly important to our society. However, science needs funding to continue the efforts. So in this case, science needs is yet another subject and verb because we've started a new sentence using a semicolon and a conjunction. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to reading your next submissions using the new information that you've gained here.